Jefferies Financial Group is sharpening its focus on Canada as it eyes the deal-making market here. Late last year, Jefferies set up its Canadian investment banking unit, and earlier this month, it said it was expanding its global partnership with Japan's Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation in this country. For more on the plans for the Canadian market, we're joined in studio by John Manley, the chairman of Jefferies Canada and former Canadian Finance Minister, and Bruce Rothney, the CEO of Jefferies Canada. Nice to have both of you here.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
John, nice to see you in person after you've kindly joined us many times.
After lots of virtual interviews, yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, everybody's getting back to the office, and here in your case, you guys are very much in expansion mode. And Bruce, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how this all came together. You used to be with Barclays Canada as well. Talk to us about what Jefferies sees as an opportunity here in Canada.
Well, we're very excited. We've had a great group of people come together at Jefferies in Canada. It's a global investment bank, and I think the hallmark of the institution is it's a very entrepreneurial firm. It has a tradition in technology, in healthcare, energy, and financial services, but really working with entrepreneurs, businesses that are at the vanguard of innovation and change. And that's something that I think is relevant to Canada and was inspiring to a bunch of us to join, including our chairman.
and you're a veteran deal maker, so when you sort of put all those pieces together, do you see a robust deal maker environment emerging based here in Canada?
Well, certainly we think technology, healthcare, energy, financial services, and a bunch of other industries are in rapid change and rapid growth internationally from a strong base in Canada. We think we have an opportunity to bring Canada to the world and the world to Canada at Jefferies, and it's going to be an exciting time. In terms of the deal-making environment, obviously the rate environment has cast a bit of a cool period, but we see that tempering over the next few quarters. And we're optimistic that we're going to have a rebound in M&A volumes and equity capital markets volumes as we head into the latter part of the year.
There's kind of, and we do this with all the segments we do in the market, you cover micro and macro. I guess on the macro side, John, when we think about the conversations you have around the opportunities in Canada, whatever these companies are looking to do, whether it's grow, whether it's partner, whether someone from outside the country is interested in the story, what do you see as the story of Canada and Canadian business going forward?
Well, first I'd say, John, I think Canadians tend to be more critical of Canada than a lot of foreigners are. I mean, we still look pretty good from the global perspective, and you look at Canada, we've got pretty much everything the world needs. We've got energy, we've got talented and smart people. We've got a very strong financial services sector across Canada, led by our banks, but with lots of others, participating in that. This is a good place to be doing business. We're a big market relative to many others in the world. We think of ourselves as small because we're always looking across the border at the behemoth, but we're still a significant market. So I think there's lots to recommend Canada.
And in terms of this entrepreneurial group that you have gathered together to be on the front lines of deal making and in working with entrepreneurs, what's the sense you're getting, Bruce, right now about what Canadian businesses want to do?
Well, I think Canadian businesses and entrepreneurs are looking for more support, and they're looking for a firm that has an entrepreneurial flavor and drive. Jefferies is a very dynamic, it's a very fast-paced institution. It understands that time is of the essence. There's got to be urgency in business, and sometimes the difference between being fast and being late is the difference between success and failure. And the firm has a tradition of an equity capital markets and leverage finance combination that's quite unique in the worldwide scheme of investment banks. And I think Canada is a place where that bringing capital and ideas to entrepreneurs is frankly something that can change the country and frankly address some of the issues like productivity and other issues that we've confronted over many years. So we can be a positive force for change in a different way than many other banks.
Yeah, productivity, I've got to tell you, John Manley, I feel like we've talked about that with you more than anybody else. But I guess sort of in the role that you're serving at Jefferies, how do we get past just the talk and get to it?
Well, I think a big part of it, well, yeah, and I talked about this when I was industry minister. I'm sorry to say that's 35 years ago. So if I'd fixed it then, we wouldn't have to talk about it now, right? No, but one of the challenges for Canada has been scale. And you're not going to get those much improved productivity numbers without scaling up some of your opportunistic companies. So I think for what we're going to try to bring to enhance that equation is the ability to expand, particularly looking south of the border, but globally as well. Bring in the capital that's required. Some is indigenous to Canada, of course, but there's foreign capital that's looking for good places to come. That's what's going to enable our companies to scale up to an international level, and that will improve those productivity numbers over time.
There's been this dialogue, you've both heard about it, whether our pension funds should be investing more in Canadian business. But, the pension funds will say, well, to get returns, you have to look around the world. We're representing Canadians. BNN Bloomberg is putting investment ideas in front of a lot of Canadians for where they can invest too, and that includes outside of the Canadian landscape. But the lens for the average Canadian to invest is through the public markets. You talked about the equity markets, and we have heard pretty routinely that the number of companies going public in Toronto seems relatively modest compared to the opportunities in other markets around the world. What sense do you feel sort of the IPO market looks like in this country going forward?
Well, look, we are strong proponents of the Toronto Stock Exchange and CBOE and the other exchanges in Canada, and they have a fundamental role to play. Canada is the 5th largest equity market in the world, and it's a very strong ecosystem that needs to play a key role. Clearly, there's a big role for NASDAQ and NYSE when you think about technology. The marginal high-paying investor may be in this country, but may very much be in the U.S., given that for every one technology company in a certain niche, there may be 15 or 20 in the United States. But it's a balance. The other thing I would say, we just had our private internet conference in Los Angeles, where we had Michael Milliken, we had Mark Andreessen, some other luminaries who are at the cutting edge of innovation, and we had a number of our Canadian clients down. And that's the kind of networking and value added that I think may make a difference to some of our great young technology companies that are trying to become the next Shopify or OpenText.
Yeah, and even in the federal budget, which we could talk about, probably take us a little bit more time, but there was this focus on money going into the AI ecosystem. We've talked endlessly about how Canada does have a lot of great talent here, but again, getting to that finish line of growing a business, maybe having a business that starts small and looks like a Shopify, we're always, hoping that we can see more of those homegrown success stories. John, how do you think about how we get from A to B?
Well, I think part of the equation is that the opportunity has to present itself, and that requires capital. It comes in. It's, Shopify is a great story. Of course, I'm from Ottawa. I'm kind of familiar with it, but they're not all going to start in somebody's girlfriend's father's basement. It's usually going to require more than love equity to get a business up and growing quickly enough that the entrepreneur retains interest and that you are able to scale up. So I think what's really required is more and more sources of that funding because there's lots of ideas. And when you look at the numbers, John, productivity numbers, competitiveness, those are things that we'd like to see improved. But on starting up companies, Canada's actually pretty good. The numbers there are really good. So the problem is not getting people with ideas or entrepreneurial spirit. The problem is getting those and catalyzing them into something that grows and becomes bigger.
Right. And Bruce, I know when you're dealing with clients and helping them to solve problems, those are company specific, but I think if we sort of widen things out, you think about technology. We were talking earlier about the EV transition. Canada has all of these natural resources that are also very important to the story of the global economy going forward, but a lot of those companies are going through a transition as well. There's a lot to work with here, and there's capital swimming in and around all of it. So, when you think about the opportunities in the Canadian economy, are you sort of weaving around all of those?
We are weaving around all those, and I would say energy for us is a major thrust. There are a number of institutions that are, frankly, pulling back from Alberta, and Jefferies intends to be a major proponent of Canadian energy. It's a source of goodness, properly and responsibly managed, and so is the transitional energy technologies that are being brought to bear out of many different cities across the country. So that's a big part of our focus. I'm glad you mentioned SMBC earlier. That's a major partnership for us. Obviously, a global bank with incredible capabilities around the world, and And Japan is very active in areas of critical minerals, in automotive and other areas of investment. We intend to bring a lot of investment from Japan into Canada.
Okay. So you guys have some big plans. How big do you want to get on Bay Street?
We want to be big enough to be important to our clients and to be able to help them. And I think we're well on our way. We're about 50 people. We've opened an office in Calgary as well, which we're quite excited by. So Toronto and Calgary will be the starting point, and we'll see where it goes from there.
All right. Any last words, John Manley?
Well, listen, I'm part of this because I became convinced that this was a serious group that wanted to come in a big way, and we're planning to stay. Because let's face it, we've seen some of these companies come in before, and it's harder than it looks, and off they go. The Jefferies commitment to be here, be real, be big, and stay was what convinced me that I should be part of it.